بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم وعد الله المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ومساكن طيبة طيبة في جنات عدن ورضوان من الله أكبر ذلك هو الفوز العظيم. This is chapter 9, verses 71 and 72 of the Holy Quran. And their English translation is, and the believers, men and women, are friends of one another. They enjoin good and they forbid evil, and they keep up prayer and pay the poor rate and obey Allah and obey His Messenger. As for these, Allah will have mercy on them. Surely Allah is mighty, wise. Allah has promised to the believers, men and women, gardens wherein rivers flow, to abide therein, and goodly dwellings in gardens of perpetual abode. And greatest of all is Allah's goodly pleasure. This is the grand achievement. And this is, if we start off with the first words of these verses are, and the believers, men and women, are friends of each other. Generally, women are literally locked up in home while men go about and so on. But if men and women cannot meet and communicate, how can they become friends? And the fact that they would meet each other and work together is given by the next part. They enjoin good and forbid evil, and keep up prayer and pay the poor rate. So how would they enjoin good and forbid evil if they are to be separated, as some people would have us believe? But what I want to look at is what they should do together. They should enjoin good. So the question is, what is good? And people have many definitions of it. And sometimes they think it is dragging people out of their homes, literally by force, to take them to pray. I guess to a degree, you might regard this as doing good. For example, if people are awake all night and you knock on the door at 1 o'clock to wake them up so that at least they can say Jummah prayer, this can be included among good deeds. But in Islam, a good deed is very simple. In Bukhari, the Holy Prophet said, beware, avoid sitting on the road. Now this would seem odd to you. Why is it a good deed not to sit on the road. So people were puzzled and they asked. And they said, but we sit there and we have a chat. In Urdu they call it gup shop. And if you go out, you see people standing on the pavements and so on and chatting and so on. But and they say, we meet and we have a chat and so on. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you must, then observe that others have the right of way. This is included in English law now, the right of way. But the Holy Prophet at that time said, don't block the highway. If you must sit there, observe the right of way. So they asked, what are the rights of way? And the Holy Prophet said, if you see someone doing something wrong, look away. And what do? We start taking videos and photographs and putting them on Facebook and what's this new thing, Chinese thing, TikTok or whatever it is, etc., etc. We start publicizing it. He said, lower your gaze. Don't harm people by sitting on the pavement and so on. If someone greets you, then return that greeting and forbid evil and advocate good. In another place, people said, what is charity? What is good? And he said, if you're walking along the street and you see a stone that you think if someone can trip over it or kick it and hurt themselves, pick it up and put it to one side. That is a good deed. In other words, in whatever you're doing, wherever you are, have consideration for others. The Holy Prophet said, if you think of doing something good, then God writes that you have done something good. If you actually do something good, then God gives you many times more, as if you've done 10 times or 100 times or 700 times that good deed. If you think of doing something bad, God only writes one bad deed in your name. If you then don't do it, then God writes a good deed. To say you have done a good deed by not doing a bad deed. But if you do something bad, then only one bad thing is written against your name. But the interesting thing, another way to look at good deeds is, I've given you a description of what they are, but another way to look at it is, someone said, O Prophet of Allah, when I do something, how do I know it's a good deed? Or it's a bad deed? And the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, go and ask your neighbor. Go and ask your neighbor. If he says what you did is a good deed, then indeed it is a good deed. If he says what you've done is a bad deed, then it is indeed a bad deed. Why? Because even when we do wrong things, we find some excuse for it. Even to the extent that, everyone does it. Then what kind of excuse is that? What kind of excuse is that? I take a baseball bat and break someone's legs, and police come and arrest me, and I'm taken to court, and my defense is, well, everyone in our street does it. They take a baseball bat and they go and break people's legs. Is that a justification? I know of someone who chased a burglar down the road with a baseball bat. Now, if that person had caught up with the burglar and given him a good thrashing, that would have been a defense to some degree. Although the law still would have said, well, he was running away. So why were you beating him up? So the point of this hadith is ask other people how they regard your actions. Not yourself, because you will always find some justification. However bad it is, the deed that you have done, you will always find some justification for it. And we've seen this, haven't we? All around us. First, a false justification was found to bomb Iraq. Oh, they've got weapons of mass destruction. They've got atom bombs. They're making atom bombs. But excuse me, Mr. Blair, you've got atom bombs. Was it okay for you to have atom bombs and not Saddam Hussein? Mr. Bush, you've got atom bombs. How come you're standing on some moral high ground to tell us that no one else should have atom bombs? Who was it who used an atom bomb against their enemies? United States of America. So what moral authority do they carry to tell other people that they shouldn't have atom bombs or they shouldn't develop them and so on? In my personal opinion, no one should have an atom bomb. No country in the world. In my opinion, the best wars were fought when the leader of the country rode out into the middle of a field and gave battle against another one. I remember many years ago, may even be many centuries ago, when I was at university, we were walking down Tottenham Court Road and we found these circular steel structures. So you could tell that, if an atom bomb dropped on them, it wouldn't destroy them. And we sort of did some research and so on, and we found that these installations are all over London, and what's going to happen is that if there's a nuclear war, who will run down those structures and be safe? The Prime Minister who starts the war. The Army High Command who conducts the war. So all the warmongers are going to be protected, and you and me, we are going to be blown to smithereens. Would have thought it should be the other way around. You started the war and you deal with it. This is why the best wars were in the days of old, when people who wanted to fight went out into a field and they killed each other to their heart's content and left all those who didn't want to fight back home inside walled cities. But everything that we do, which somehow helps someone in any way at all, is a good deed. It is said in a hadith that when men are presented before God and they have to account for their deeds, God will say to them, "O son of Adam, I fell ill and you didn't come to see me. I fell ill and you didn't come to see me." And people will be astonished and they'll say, but you are Allah. How can you fall ill? And Allah will say that, "Didn't you know that so and so, one of my servants, had fallen ill and you knew about him, but you didn't go to visit him. You didn't go to ask how he was." So not doing your duty to another human being is akin to not doing your duty to Allah. God is saying, there's no point in you saying, "I'm doing something for Allah." So, you might be dying in the street. "Sorry, I can't help you. I'm saying my namaz," or "I'm reading my Quran." And there are people like that. When we were in Pakistan, there was a doctor near us that people of the area used to go to, a very nice man, very observant. But the problem was there'd be people sick and in pain sitting downstairs in his waiting room, and he'd be nowhere to be seen. And patients would be told, "He's upstairs reciting the Holy Quran." That's what God is referring to. "O son of Adam, I fell ill and you didn't come to see me." And then God will say, "O son of Adam, I begged you for food and you didn't feed me." And people will say, "Oh Lord, do you eat? You're Allah, you're Almighty, you created everything. You give everyone food." And God will say, "Did you not know that so and so, my servant, begged you for food? And you did not feed him? If you had, you would have found the reward of that with me." Then God will say, "Oh son of Adam, I asked you. I was thirsty and I asked you for a drink. And you refused to give me a drink." And men will say, "Oh Lord, do you get thirsty as well?" And Lord will say, "So and so, my servant, asked you to give him a drink, and you did not give him a drink. If you'd given him a drink, you would have surely found that with me." The point that Allah is making is that every little thing that you do to help someone else is a good deed, and it will have its reward. And to help anyone at all, in any way at all, is akin to helping Allah. People talk about some great things, going out and fighting the jihad and doing this and doing that and so on, and yet their neighbor is hungry or in distress or needs medical treatment, and they pay no attention to them. I end with the story of a great Sufi, I forget his name, and he went to Hajj, and on the way back he prayed to Allah to tell him if his Hajj had been accepted, and God said no. So he was very upset because he was an old man, and he prayed to Allah and he said, "Was anyone's Hajj accepted?" And God said, "Yes." So this man asked Allah to tell him who this man was. And he then went and found the man, knocked on his door, and when the man opened the door, this Sufi embraced him and grabbed him and said, "Congratulations, you are the only person whose Hajj this year found acceptance in God's eyes." And the man said, "How can that be? I didn't go to Hajj." So they were puzzled. And the Sufi said, "Well, you had no intention of going for Hajj." The man said, "Well, I intended to. I started off. And I got to the end of the street and I heard crying coming from this house. And the children were crying. And so he knocked on the door, and this woman opened the door, and he said, 'Your children are crying, and what kind of mother are you? You're paying no attention to them.' And she said, 'I'm a widow. I have no means of support. The children are hungry, and I'm pretending I'm cooking something. So I put a pot on the fire. And I'm telling the kids, food is not yet cooked, it's not ready. Be patient.' And she said, 'I'm hoping that they'll cry and they'll get tired and they'll go to sleep.' And the Sufi said, and the man said to the Sufi, 'I was shocked that someone in my neighborhood is in this state, and I'm not doing anything.' So he said, 'I went back home, postponed my wish to go to Hajj. I went to the bazaar and bought food and things for the lady and her children. And I've been supporting them.' Can you see the point of this story? That Hajj is not about how many times you've been to Makkah. People proudly say, 'I performed 7 Hajj. Well, Quran only says 1. The Holy Prophet Muhammad did 1. So why do you need to perform 7? But that is another discussion and debate. Hajj is about serving God's creatures. If you don't serve humanity, regardless of their religion, caste, creed, color, whatever, then you're defeating the purpose of religion. Then your prayers are meaningless, your fasting is meaningless, your Hajj is meaningless, because you haven't understood the purpose of undertaking these devotions. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Qur'anil Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadun kareemun malikun barrufur rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ansur man nasara deen Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam waj'alna minhum afdal man khazala deen Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa la taj'alna minhum. Ibadallah rahmukumullah. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Yadhkurullaha yadhkurkum wa yastajib lakum wa la dhikrullahi akbar wallahu ya'lamu ma tasna'un. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamatis salah, qad qamatis salah. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Alam yaj'al kaidahum fi tadlil wa arsala alaihim tayran ababil tarmihim bi hijaratin min sijil waja'alahum ka'asfin ma'kul. Allahu Akbar. Sami Allahu liman hamidah.
Rabbana.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أستغفر الله. اللهم انت السلام. Thank you very much for joining us for our Friday service. Our next broadcast is going to be, inshallah, on Sunday morning, 9 o'clock UK time in Urdu, and then 9:30 in English. Until we meet again, I pray that Allah keeps all of you safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, goodbye.